Episode 93. 93 was the number born by Doug Gilmore, who is also a Kingstonian, and 1993 was the year when Joe Carter hit a 3-run home run in the bottom of the 9th inning to secure back-to-back World Series championships for the Toronto Blue Jays. Beyond MD, episode 93, here we go! First off, I want to take a moment to thank all of you for supporting me in the election for CMPA Council that happened this spring. I'm excited to say that I was successfully elected. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for believing in me. I'm really excited for what lies ahead, for the chance to work with other doctors to continue advocating for all of you across the country. I think it's going to be an amazing challenge where I can continue to learn and grow. So thank you so much. I think you're all going to really enjoy today's episode because we are revisiting the topic of how to optimize credit card rewards so that we can all continue to travel the world and build memories with the people we love most. Believe it or not, the first episode I did on this topic in September 2023 with Ricky Zhang, this was the most popular episode on the show of all time. And today, to revisit this topic and to talk about all the updates, I'm really thrilled to welcome one of our own, Dr. Benjamin Hutten-Czapski, who is a chemical engineer turned anesthesiologist whose obsession with optimization led him first through personal finance and then down the rabbit hole of travel rewards. On his website, rewardsmd.ca, and Facebook group, RewardsMD Canada, you can reach him for free one-on-one consultations on how to optimize your rewards earning as a professional, whether through your day-to-day or less traditional spending like taxes. If you already have a collection of points you're not sure how to use, you can join one of his free group sessions where you can learn how to systematically find good deals using tools like Points Yeah. He also actively advocates for Canadian doctors' interests in this ecosystem, such as Chexy, a tool that lets you pay personal taxes, utilities, and more through credit card. And please stay tuned for updates on Chexy, all because of Ben's hard work later on in the show. So guys, with that, please enjoy my interview with Benjamin Hutten-Czapski. Okay, Ben, welcome to Beyond MD. Tell us a bit about yourself, what you do, and on the side, I know you also run Rewards MD, so just talk to us a bit about all that.
Yeah, sure. So I grew up in Northern Ontario, kind of a middle of nowhere kind of a kid to a rural physician, and I always planned on kind of following in his footsteps. He was kind of the quintessential generalist, you know, catching babies one day and assisting in the OR the other, working in the ER, working in the nursing home. Life doesn't always work out exactly the same. I did an undergrad in chemical engineering, went into medicine, thought I would do family practice like him, but ended up doing family practice anesthesia. Started off with some ER mix in there, lots of locum work, Northern Ontario, East Coast, that sort of thing. But these days, there's just such a shortage in anesthesia. I'm pretty much full-time anesthesia. And then, as you mentioned, I've kind of fallen into a couple of other sorts of jobs on the side.
Tell me, how did your fascination with traveling, optimizing that process, and then Rewards MD, how did that all happen?
Yeah, so I've always been like a hyper optimizer, and I started off with the typical kind of personal finance optimization, you know, do it yourself, low cost, factor tilt, asset allocation strategies, asset location strategies, Smith maneuver, the whole business. Been very active in the physician financial community for some time, and I'd always viewed kind of travel rewards as this side low impact, low stakes area that was not really worth hyper optimizing. I never really turned my strong focus to it. In my mind, it was always something where, you know, you pick the appropriate card from the menu provided from the bank you go to, and you just use the points, and it just is what it is. You get kind of a couple % back. But when I realized that there was another layer, that there was something more than just this fixed return, that there were these variable value points, that it kind of introduced a whole new dial that I could turn, and it tapped into that hyper optimization part of my brain. The spreadsheets came out, the wheels started turning, and I started seeing ways that I could get really outsized impact from it. And then beyond that, I started realizing that the outsized impact was on areas of my life that I had a hard time having those similar impacts through conventional means. So by that I mean, no matter how much I had saved, no matter how much I earned, there's certain things I could never convince myself to spend on, particularly as that optimized DIY investor. The thought of pulling out significant funds from my corporation to fly in business or first class or to stay at a luxury hotel, it just wasn't even possible. But the nature of the variable value points not only made it possible, but made it almost seem like it'd be unwise not to travel in that way. And that's when it really clicked. So then I started sharing my perspectives with other people. I thought I would write some articles to save myself time. And those sorts of things don't end up saving you time. They just get you more and more busy. So here we are.
Ben, so there are other people who also do work in this space. Like a few years ago, I interviewed Ricky Zhang, Prince of Travel, but I would love to know your offering, Rewards MD. How do you kind of separate yourself from the rest of the pack?
Yeah, Ricky Zhang, Prince of Travel, a lot of respect, very successful, kind of the biggest name perhaps in travel in Canada right now. So it's a bit flattering to even have to answer the question. I think there's a couple ways that I would compare and contrast myself to Prince of Travel. I think, for example, I specifically target this kind of in-between wealth. So not the average consumer, like a lot of the Prince of Travel articles, but also not the ultra wealthy, like the Prince of Travel concierge service. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, but their concierge offering, the pricing starts at $5,000 a month. I don't know about you, but I don't think I could ever earn quite enough points to justify spending $5,000 a month to have someone else help me use them.
Yeah, no, I'm in the same boat.
Yeah. And then beyond that, doctors, we often spend enough to have this potential, but we don't have the time to really figure it out. And there's this potential for a pretty significant impact on our quality of life. We're at this kind of sweet spot. And then beyond that, I have intimate understanding of doctor-specific spending and earning opportunities like locum travel, tax spending, conference travel, medical corporations, holding companies, these sorts of things. I know about the doctor-specific bank relationships and promotions. And I also understand a lot of the kind of professional specific strengths and weaknesses when it comes to the kind of flexibility you need to optimally use your points. Oftentimes you might hear about these fantastic deals on flights leaving a week from now, but you're on call. You're part of like a rota. This isn't the kind of flexibility that our profession normally has, but understanding that has led me to develop some strategies and tools to help physicians take advantage of those opportunities that they might otherwise think are not available to them.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And we will dive into some of your strategies that I think are unique to you and your blog a little bit later on. Maybe let's just start really basic, because a lot of us are busy. A lot of us don't have too much time to dive into the nitty gritty. So one may ask, well, if I'm going to start with one or two cards that are going to be keeper cards for the long term, where should I look to start?
Yeah, and certainly that's a great question. And I want to first take a quick step back and say that, we'll be talking about some credit card related ways to earn rewards and some non-credit card related ways to earn rewards, such as the Aeorplan e-store. Certainly there's a lot of benefit in coordinating your various strategies. But when it comes to selecting credit cards, there's a few different parameters that I always try to optimize around when trying to help someone determine a keeper card or the right cards to have in their wallets. And I think it's important to distinguish that from early on between a card that you're opening to keep and a card that maybe you're just opening temporarily. Maybe there's a promotional bonus. Maybe you have significant spending coming up that makes that advantageous, a trip where the perks on the card make sense. That doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be holding the card forever. So cards that I view as keeper cards are ones that either I'm looking to use daily. So maybe they have good insurances, maybe they have good earning rates on categories that I spend in regularly, or they might be a card that I don't actually spend on, but provides a benefit in excess of the annual fee. So a good example of that would be the Marriott Bonvoy cards. These cards are typically somewhere in the $120 to $150 a year annual fee, but after their first anniversary and every year subsequent, they provide a free night certificate that's easily worth hundreds of dollars. There's other examples, cards that might give you free checked bags or a companion pass. And the specific cards for you, of course, are going to depend on your family's travel patterns. But making sure that there's a clear net positive on the annual fee and making sure that the benefits of the cards line up with your spending patterns are the key first steps.
Now, some may also ask, well, what ecosystem should I focus on? Aeroplan comes up a lot. We also hear a lot about Avion through RBC, and then there's the Amex collection of cards. Can you give us some things to think about when it comes to which ecosystem to focus on?
Sure. I like to think about the entirety of rewards as landing in a Venn diagram. Maybe not the coolest of diagrams, but I think it's certainly a reasonable one. So in this Venn diagram, the first circle is the easiest to understand, and these are fixed value rewards. So these are things that are either literally cash back or effectively cash back. So, you have your Costco MasterCard, you're earning Costco cash. It's effectively cash back. You can only spend it at Costco. There's certainly lots of travel cards that fall into that sort of category too. If you have a TD first class travel card, that earns TD travel points. And the strength and weakness of fixed value points are two sides of the same coin, and that's simplicity. So these are the best kind of points for someone who doesn't want to learn that other dial to turn. Because whether you use those TD travel card points for a hotel, a car rental on a Monday, a Tuesday, Air Canada, WestJet, none of it matters. The points are worth the same amount. So you don't have to worry that you're using them the wrong way when you're using them through their portal. This contrasts diametrically with variable value points, the second circle of the Venn diagram. Mm-hmm. And the quintessential example here is Aeroplan. If you just plug in a random set of dates to a random location on Aeroplan, you could find all sorts of ranges of deals. You might find business class from Toronto to Zurich for 70,000 points, or you might find it for 370,000 points. And understanding why and how and learning how to systematically take advantage of that is what makes it appealing to someone who wants to optimize travel. But for someone who has no interest, of course, that's a complete downside. So that's the first two circles, fixed and variable. And the third is transferable. These are points that can become other kinds of points without losing significant value. And this kind of center of the Venn diagram, these hybrid points that can do a little bit of everything, that's where points like Avion and Amex end up. These points can be used as fixed value if you'd like, if you want the simplicity. They can be used as variable value through something called a flight chart, or they can be transferred to various airlines where they have the attributes of the points of those different programs. So with this kind of framework in mind, oftentimes when I'm working one-on-one with a physician, I try to get a sense for the nature of their travel and their interest in complexity. And that's what kind of guides them and guides me to push them towards certain products. But for people who aren't particularly sure, certainly the ones that have kind of hybrid characteristics like Amex can be particularly powerful. There's just so many different ways you can use them. Because if all of your points are in Aeroplan, really you only ever have two options. Do I pay cash or do I pay with Aeroplan points? Whereas if you have an Amex point, which can become many other things, it just opens up additional options.
That's a great overview, I think, Ben. Now, while we're talking about Amex, maybe we can just touch on this a little bit. So I first signed up for the American Express Business Platinum early in 2023. This is when I was getting more familiar with Prince of Travel, and there were some pretty good sign-up bonuses, which may still exist. But then over time, their fees have gone up. So overall, do you still find the American Express Business or Personal Platinum cards as appealing today as they were maybe a couple years ago?
Yeah, so I can totally relate to that. And while they've introduced some credits to help offset some of the fees, not everyone is going to value the credits at their face value. So for those who aren't aware, the personal platinum card, for example, is $799 Canadian a year. Pretty impressive sort of fee. And it comes with some credits like a $200 travel credit, which you can use through their travel portal, and a $200 dining experience credit, which you have to use at one of a short list of restaurants, these kind of Michelin and Michelin adjacent sort of places. But if you aren't the type of person to go to those sorts of restaurants, is that $200 dining experience credit really saving you anything? Or if that travel credit, if you have to use it through the portal and maybe the portal doesn't have the best price, is it really saving you 200 or is it saving you 180 or 150? So when I'm looking at the platinum cards for an individual and trying to determine, is this a card that they're going to open just for the sign up bonus and close or hold long term? There's two separate primary considerations that I have. So first off, does their spending pattern line up with the card's earning? So with the Business Platinum, it is one of the best cards for paying your taxes. And we'll talk about that a bit later. But if you are using it to pay taxes, and you're holding this card in your corporation, paying the annual fee from your corporation, then maybe it's a great strategy for you. But if you're just holding it and you're spending $1,000 a month on miscellaneous business items, there's cheaper cards that can address the earning part. But the second aspect is the perk part of things. So the card might not make sense on a kind of points and cents perspective, but if you value the perks significantly, maybe you're willing to pay the fee for the lounge access, for the Marriott Gold and Hilton Gold and other associated perks. I would just say in general, when trying to optimize a setup, particularly for professionals where we have the luxury of being able to hold on to cards for business purposes, it's really quite logical to want to hold these more expensive perk generating cards as your business card. This gives you a pretty significant discount on what can otherwise be a very expensive way to access these perks.
Ben, maybe now let's shift to point accumulation. And maybe you can kind of just start off by giving us a basic overview or a framework on your approach to accumulating points.
The framework that I like to use is one of three different pairs. So I like to split up earning into personal versus business, which is probably the most straightforward of them. So if I'm talking to a physician who has high business expenses, we might spend more time talking on that aspect versus more commonly physicians have relatively low to moderate business spending and primarily personal spending. The next pair is organic versus inorganic earning. So organic earning is any kind of quote unquote normal credit card use. So, you're going to the grocery store and you pull out your Amex Cobalt because it has 5x on food and you earn in that way. Inorganic is any way of earning that has some kind of effort and or cost associated with it. It's things like paying a fee to pay your taxes on a credit card, or maybe your kid is going to a private school that accepts credit card at a certain fee, or your contractor accepts credit card at a certain fee. Or maybe there's an effort associated with it. So maybe you've come to learn that the convenience store associated with the gas station you shop at, maybe you've learned that when you pay inside, it codes as groceries. So walking inside to pay for your gas with your Cobalt card is earning you 5 points a dollar instead of 2 points a dollar. So that's an effort cost.
Oh, well, so is that true? Can we do that?
So not across the board. And this is certainly a bit of kind of like inside baseball and hyper optimization here. But the reality is, so for those who aren't aware, the Amex Cobalt card is perhaps one of the single best ongoing sustainable organic earning cards for personal spending. And it does well because it has this 5 points a dollar on food category. But the way how it's registered is based on vendor designation, not based on what you actually purchase. Now, it's certainly intended for food. So, there's certain kind of limits to how much you might want to try to game or manipulate this, but many convenience stores happen to code as food. And when you pay inside the convenience store, whatever you happen to be buying happens to code as food. So this would just be an example as an inorganic way to earn, because it's not a normal thing to go inside just to pay, just to earn more points, right? And what I would say when learning about earning and thinking about organic versus inorganic is that the inorganic aspects, the juice needs to be worth the squeeze, right? Like there needs to be enough predictable value from the points to justify either the effort cost or the literal financial cost. Because there's no sense in paying a fee to use a credit card if the fee from the credit card is greater than the benefit earned. So that's the first thing is the benefit needs to be significant. And then more broadly speaking, inorganic earning is usually a game of percents. Usually you're trying to squeeze out 1%, 2%, 3%, something like that. And because it's a game of percents, the bigger the absolute number you're applying it to, the greater the potential benefit, which of course, once again, circles back to this idea of paying taxes by credit card, which we'll get to later. The last pair of that I consider when I'm approaching kind of my framework for earning is sustainable earning versus unsustainable earning. So sustainable earning is, as you could predict, anything that you could do day after day, month after month, year after year. As much as I feel like I'm giving Amex too much credit with the Cobalt, maybe I'll instead talk about a related card from RBC, the Ion Plus. So the Ion Plus is another great earner for food, for gas, and it's a Visa. So some people prefer that. And sustainable earning is something like using that card every day forever. It doesn't have a deadline. It doesn't, it is something you can do ongoing. But unsustainable earning would be things like sign-up bonuses, referral bonuses, promotions for adding a supplemental card where you get an extra X thousand points if you open a new card for your spouse and they spend X amount of money on it. I usually think about these unsustainable means of earning as almost like a rainy day savings, a special occasions pool of points that I can tap into opportunistically. Certainly you could sprint your way through sign-up bonuses, kind of hopscotching your way from one to the other to collect them all as quickly as you can. But eventually you'll make your way through all the ones that you reasonably have access to. And as a result, there's not really an advantage to rush through them versus being a bit more opportunistic in it, waiting until there's a great promotion, waiting until there's a time where the other perks of the card line up with your travel or life plans, or opening it up when you have a big expense. So these three pairs, this personal versus business, this organic versus inorganic, and sustainable versus unsustainable, are areas that I explore with the physicians I work with to see where the biggest potential impact from the smallest change would be. And certainly if someone comes to me and they say, I have this honeymoon coming up and it's, next year and I need these points fast, then maybe sign-up bonuses and referral bonuses, that's where we're going to focus on. But if instead we have someone who, they have a young kid, they're not planning on traveling quite yet, but they want to in the future, then of course I'm going to be focusing on more sustainable strategies.
Maybe let's just touch on these sign-up bonuses, because I can tell you when I started learning a bit about this space a couple years ago, sign-up bonuses were getting a lot of attention. And I think at the time, you would maybe sign up for like an American Express card, maybe the Business Platinum, and you would get a large installment of points almost immediately, or at least after 3 months. And now I think things have changed a bit. Maybe you have to hang on to the card for maybe a second year to get the full installment. But how is that aspect of earning points, these sign-up bonuses, changing over time? Are you finding that you're emphasizing this a little bit less than before? Would love your take.
Yeah, I mean, certainly, under this kind of unsustainable earning approach of sign-up bonuses, there's still lots of points to earn, but the banks, they became wise to people. What used to be the 0.1% exploiting the sign-up bonuses maybe became 1% or 5% or 10% of people. So they've had to come with new tweaks. And I think maybe the best example of that would be the new sign-up bonuses that they actually just released today on the 21st of May for Amex's Marriott Bonvoy cards and their Aeroplan cards, where not only do they have a second year component where you have to hold the card for a second year, but a significant chunk of the first year bonus is put behind what I would consider almost like a stretch goal worth of spending. We're talking $30,000, $40,000, $75,000 worth of spending in the first year to get all of the potential points.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, And more than that, in the past maybe 2 years or so, a number of the banks have instituted more and more strict terms about double dipping, triple dipping, getting the same sign-up bonuses over and over again. Aeorplan, for example, in February of last year, instituted rules that transcend the different bank providers. So if you've had, for example, the TD Aeroplan Visa Infinite, and you see a good bonus on the CIBC Aeroplan Visa Infinite, you are now potentially going to be subject to having that welcome bonus clawed back. And there's still plenty of ways to take advantage of these bonuses. There's just a few more aspects of nuance. So for people who really need that quick point injection, or for people who really want to maximize that, I go through with them kind of, okay, this card first and then go to that card next. But I think it also needs to be simultaneously viewed in a more holistic sense, because let's say you've opened up the business platinum card and you've gotten this big sign-up bonus, and you also have all of these perks and this big annual fee. If you rush to open the personal platinum card, you now have two cards with very similar perks. So you're not going to get twice the benefit from the lounge access, but you are going to get twice the annual fee. So there's also a bit of strategy there, even if you're not planning on holding the cards long term, in terms of timing when they should be opened up, to kind of stretch that benefit across multiple years.
Okay, is it safe to say, based on what you told us so far, that your long-term approach to accumulating points will often center on organic spend, sustainable spend, but then depending on the situation, sprinkling on the inorganic spending and more unsustainable spending? Is that a good way to kind of summarize what you've talked about so far?
I totally agree. I would say for the average person, it's a lot easier to implement and to wrap your head around more organic, sustainable earning, just because it's closer to what you already have been doing. It might be as simple as just swapping out one of the cards you have for a card that would earn better in the places you're already shopping, on the things you're already spending. It's a lot harder for some people to get on board with this idea of paying a fee to pay their taxes, or walking inside the gas station to pay for their gas. But if the appetite is there, the impact of those changes can actually be pretty surprisingly big.
You talked about a few cards that you like for accumulating on the spend, the American Express Cobalt. That for me is my favorite card for day-to-day use, because it gives me points on the areas where I tend to spend a bit more. You also talked about, I think, the one from RBC, the Ion. Are there other cards that you are a big fan of that allow you to just accumulate maybe a bit more rapidly on the daily spend?
Yeah, I would say in Canada, for the most part, to have an effective, sustainable personal earnings strategy, you almost are always going to have two separate cards. You're going to have one card that has some heavy hitting multipliers on categories in which you spend a lot. So you mentioned the Cobalt earns 5 points per dollar on food, earns 2 points a dollar on gas, for example. I mentioned the Ion Plus card from RBC, earns 3 points a dollar on food and 3 points a dollar on gas. And it's a Visa, so it's more widely accepted for people who don't take it. But both of those cards by themselves don't really stand on their own. They kind of need an additional card. So for the Cobalt, you're going to need a non-Amex card for places that don't take Amex. So there's some strategy to coordinate those points. So because Amex points can, for example, transfer into Aeroplan points, it's a common strategy to combine a Cobalt with an Aeroplan Visa. You could alternatively combine it with an Avion Visa, because both Amex and Avion points can transfer to British Airways and can transfer to Cathay and can transfer to Qatar. So there's also issues with insurance on some of these earner cards. They don't always have the best purchase protections or travel insurances. So you need kind of this fallback card for your expensive purchases, your travel purchases, and for purchases that just won't take your Amex. And this kind of two-card approach can also be found in other issuers. So let's say you're not at all interested in variable value, you're very much interested in fixed value. Maybe you bank with Scotia. The two-card approach from them is totally reasonable. The Scotia Gold Amex and the Scotia Passport Visa Infinite are both cards that MDs can typically get with a waived annual fee. They both don't have foreign exchange fees, and they have one of the simplest and most powerful fixed value point. So for someone who has no interest in learning how to get that outsized value, that strategy can be really effective.
While we're talking about American Express, I will say that my favorite credit card to use over the years has been the American Express Cobalt. This card has allowed us to accumulate many more points as a family on our regular expenses, especially the 5 points for every dollar spent on food and drink. And for this reason, I plan to keep this credit card in my wallet for a long time going forward. If you are considering this credit card or wish to sign up for it, there are obviously many ways to do so. I will also leave my referral link in the show notes. And if this is the way you choose to sign up and support the show, just know that I am truly grateful. If you do use the referral link, you can click View Cards with Referral Offers at the top left to get access to the American Express Cobalt. And now back to the interview. So what I did, in addition to having a Cobalt, I opened up the TD Aeroplan Visa Infinite. For me, that seemed to be a pretty good combination. Then they also have the Visa Infinite Privilege, which is a more expensive card with a few more perks. What are your tips on helping somebody decide, well, which Visa Infinite do I go for, the basic or the privilege? Any thoughts there?
Yeah, so totally very common scenario I end up in. People come to the conclusion that the Cobalt's best for them. They want a Visa backup. Either they like Aeroplan or they're with TD, and one way or the other, they end up thinking TD Aeroplan. Now, the difference between those cards is about $460. It's a pretty significant difference, so the decision can feel pretty important. In my mind, there's one first step and then a second, more subjective step. So the first step is I take into consideration the fact that the Visa Infinite Privilege has a higher point earning rate. So the cheaper card earns 1 point a dollar. The more expensive card earns 1.25 point. And what that means is at high enough spending levels, that extra quarter point offsets the annual fee difference. So the first thing I do is I would ask the individual what amount of spending is likely to end up on this card. And keeping in mind that you're trying to put as much as possible on the Cobalt for its higher multiplier. So what is the residual spending? And if that residual spending is $80,000 and above, in almost every circumstance, you're going to want the more expensive card. The higher earn rate on the points will help offset the annual fee. And that's ignoring all the other perks of the card. Now, that's the second part. Is let's say your spending is less than $80,000, as most of us or many of us are. There's still a number of perks that the card can bring you in terms of giving you lounge access and priority check-in and allowing your upgrade credits with Aeroplan to have an additional year on their expiration. So some people might be willing to pay for those perks even if the points don't justify it. So what I would say is for someone who's curious about the perks, provided you can spend enough to hit the initial year's sign-up bonus, it's not unreasonable to trial out the more expensive card for a year. Use the perks, get a sense of them, get a sense of how much you're spending, how far are you below that 80,000 threshold, and then ask yourself, is that difference in cost versus extra point earning worth it for the perks that you received?
Ben, let's talk about the Aeroplan e-store. It's not something I'm super familiar with. How do we optimize this process for point accumulation?
Yeah, so the Aeroplan e-store is one of my favorite non-credit card way to earn these very valuable variable value points. That's a bit of a tongue twister there. So the Aeroplan e-store is a shopping portal, something like Rakuten, maybe you've heard of. So it's a website run by Aeroplan, from which you can get to other vendors. Think Apple, Samsung, Sephora, Amazon, and hundreds of others. And when you go through the Aeroplan e-store to those stores, you'll see various point multipliers like 2 points a dollar, 7 points a dollar, and so on and so forth. And those points you'll earn in addition to whatever you'd earn on the credit card you're using. And it doesn't matter what credit card you use. And in fact, you don't have to use a credit card at all. You could use a gift card, as the case may be, which as an aside, opens up one of my favorite ways to optimize the Aeroplan e-store, which is what I like to call deal stacking. So some different stores, like say Costco or Sobeys or other grocery stores, have promotions on gift cards where maybe the gift card will be 20% off, or maybe it'll come with scene points or something like that. So if a gift card at my grocery store happens to have a promotion and that gift card can be used through the e-store, then I can get both benefits at the same time. But I just want to take a step back and say, like all of the rest of this, I really try to limit cognitive overhead here. It's not that important to remember to go through this website to get 3 extra points $1 on a pair of flip-flops from Amazon. Like, it's just not going to be enough points to be worth the hassle. So there's 2 main categories that I think about when I think about using the Aeroplan e-store. I think about moderate recurring spend, that it can just be my habit to go through the e-store. So like pet food and skincare and things that, have this cadence to purchase. And if the store that we get those things from are on e-store, great. The other one are large, infrequent spends that maybe I can even delay their timing. A cell phone, a laptop, a computer, a piece of furniture, something that costs maybe thousands of dollars, that maybe I could wait until there's a promotion on the Aeroplan e-store, because they have them pretty predictably. For example, Black Friday, they'll often be 10 to 15 points $1. So, for example, last Black Friday, I replaced my computer. 15 points $1 on a $3,000 computer, you're talking 45,000 points in addition to what you'd earn on the card. Your cards normally are only earning 1 or 1.25 point $1. So that can be pretty incredible. And that's worth the cognitive effort in my mind for something that scale.
100%.
I do want to say one more thing about the Aeroplan e-store, which is that it's also the easiest way to get to the first tier of Aeroplan status. So Aeroplan status can be obtained traditionally through a combination of dollars spent on Air Canada flights that you fly on yourself and miles flown or segments flown. But the first tier of Aeroplan status can be obtained through everyday qualifying spending. These are points that you earn by using your Aeroplan card or by shopping at an Aeroplan partner like the LCBO or the Journey gas station. But the Aeroplan e-store counts towards this. To get that first tier of Aeroplan status, you need to earn 100,000 points, which on a regular Aeroplan card such as you have, you'd have to spend $100,000, which is pretty significant. But in my example of buying a computer during the Black Friday promotion, you'd get 45,000 points towards that 100,000. That would be such a massive jumpstart towards Aeroplan status, which could get you upgrade credits, which could give you other additional benefits.
That's a great point. Now, let's say we get to that first tier of Aeroplan status. What does that do exactly for our travel game? Because I'm obviously not there. I don't have much familiarity with this, but what does it do for us?
Yeah, so I would say that the answer depends slightly on whether or not you're already holding one of those premium Aeroplan cards. Because if you already have a premium Aeroplan card that gives you priority check-in and priority baggage handling and lounge access and all this sort of stuff, the additional marginal benefit is a bit smaller. In that circumstance, the main benefits that you're going to be getting is you'll get an additional free checked bag. You'll get e-upgrade credits, which can be used to bid towards upgrading your flight. So let's say, for example, I was flying from Cancun back to Toronto a couple months ago. I booked using points into premium economy, and I used e-upgrade credits to secure an upgrade into business class. So that gave me elevated travel without having to have the extra points required. It also gives you a phone number you can call that has a shorter wait time to get through to Aeroplan or Air Canada, which can come in handy when things aren't working out the way that you'd like them to. If you don't have the premium card, there's a couple other minor benefits, like being able to check in at the priority check-in lane. But I would say from my perspective, the big one is probably the e-upgrade credits. And then a bit of a sleeper benefit is that you get an additional 2 points $1 through the Aeroplan e-store. So if you use the Aeroplan eStore to get 25K status, which is the name of the first tier, then every subsequent bit of spending gets an additional 2 points a dollar. And just as an aside, we haven't really been talking about the specific value of these points. And of course, variable value points can vary significantly in their value, but it's not unreasonable to use kind of shorthand estimation like maybe 2 cents per point. So if you have a deal where you're getting 15 points a dollar, that's 30% back. Or if you get a tier of status that gets you an extra 2 points a dollar, that's like 4% more.
Let's move on to paying taxes with our credit cards, because I stumbled across the Pay Simply app maybe about a year ago. And it was around the time where I had a business tax payment to make. So I called up Amex and I said, will this payment kind of go through on the card? And they said, yes, no problem. Great way at that time to accumulate some points. And then I started to think, well, can I make tax payments on a more regular basis? And then when I came across your blog, lo and behold, you had an article dedicated to this. So Ben, my question for you is, paying taxes with our credit cards, accumulating points, what's your take on this? And what are the key considerations here?
Yeah, so this certainly would fall under that inorganic category. And for some people, it can be the single biggest business sustainable inorganic way of earning points. Because when we think about the flows of money that we have as physicians, certainly maybe a third to one half of our money is moving through to the government's hands. So there's a lot of opportunity here. In terms of the circumstances where it makes sense to do it, there are a couple factors that come in mind. So first off, if you are using a card that doesn't earn valuable points, that you don't know how to use, then you certainly shouldn't be doing this, right? There's not going to be a circumstance where paying a fee to get a point that you never use is valuable. So the first step is making sure that you're earning a good kind of point. So whether that's Amex points or Aeroplan points or Avion points, and again, it depends a bit on your specific preferences and travel patterns, but it needs to be a good kind of point. The second thing that helps significantly is if there is a sign-up bonus that there's no other way you would be able to hit. You're looking at the business platinum card and it says spend $15,000 in 3 months, and you're thinking, I don't have $15,000 to spend in 3 months. Or you're looking at those new stretch goal sign-up bonuses I mentioned that just came out today that are as high as $75,000 in 3 months. In 1 year. For a lot of people, that's just not a reasonably reliable target. They might be worried that they're going to open the card and not hit that. Because those sign-up bonuses add so many additional points, it helps easily offset the fee of the credit of using the credit card. And I think that's something that we should mention quite clearly, is that services like Pay Simply charge a fee. So like all forms of inorganic earning, the benefit needs to significantly outweigh that fee. So first off, it has to be that good, valuable point. If you're using it for a sign-up bonus you wouldn't hit otherwise, that's very helpful. Another circumstance that is very important to consider is the fee going to be potentially a write-off for you? Is this something that you and your accountant feel is appropriate to claim as a business expense? So many accountants that I've discussed this with are of the opinion that a transaction fee necessary to pay a business expense is in and of itself a business expense. So the ability to take that fee and claim it as a business expense significantly reduces the hurdle that you have to overcome to come out net ahead. And when you kind of factor in all these things and you select a good card with a high earning rate of a very valuable point for you, and there's a sign-up bonus and you're writing off the fee, then it can become trivially easy to come out ahead. You can have a card where you're earning thousands of dollars of points for hundreds of dollars of fee, and that fee is being spent by your corporation. And the specific numbers are ones that I always go through with an individual based on their own tax requirements.
You mentioned one specific credit card. I believe it was the American Express Business Gold that might be particularly useful in this scenario. If you're making quarterly payments above a certain threshold, it may allow for additional point accumulation. Can you tell us a bit about this?
Yeah, that's actually a very nice little sweet spot. So most of the premium cards that earn these these valuable points, they earn at a rate of 1.25 points per dollar. And this is sufficient to come out ahead of the fee in many circumstances. However, there is a cheaper card, the Business Gold card. And this card, while it typically only earns 1 point a dollar, when you very specifically are spending $20,000 or more a quarter, you get a 10,000 point bonus. So let's walk through that math just slowly here. So if you spend exactly $20,000, you get the 20,000 points from the normal earning rate, plus an additional 10,000 points from the bonus. So you get 30,000. So 30,000 points on 20,000 spending is 1.5 points a dollar. So you're actually out earning the Business Platinum. You're out earning the TD Aeroplan Visa Infinite Privilege. You're out earning these cards that are $600, $700, $800 with a card that's less than half of that. And it's something that is an ongoing bonus. This isn't just the sign-up bonus. Now, because that point bonus, that quarterly point bonus is focused on a $20,000 quarterly spend, it's really useful for people who have tax spending that's right around that amount, because they can reliably spend $20,000 a quarter, get that bonus every single quarter, and end up better off than if they had the platinum without having to pay the fee. Now, if you want to hold the platinum for the perks anyway, then maybe it doesn't make sense. But for someone who's put off by that really high price tag on the business platinum, it's a very effective strategy.
One question I just have to ask. So let's say we are paying business taxes regularly through these credit cards, accumulating points. These points come to us. Now, are these points that technically should be used for business travel, or can they be used for personal travel? Maybe it enters that gray zone where it's a discussion we have to have with the people in our network, like our accountant. Do you have a take on this?
Yeah, what I can tell you is that there's some circumstances where it's certainly not kosher, and then we'll move into more of the gray area. So the CRA has a statement about using reward points and credit card rewards from business spend, and they make it pretty clear that the more cash-like those rewards, the more of a taxable benefit that is. So if you're considering, say, using the Scotia Momentum Visa, a cashback card that can earn as much as 4% cash back, which can otherwise be a great card to use for some of these strategies. If you're using it for business spend, that is very clearly a cash-like benefit. It is a cashback card. And when you try to take that cash back and apply it to your personal spending, in the CRA's mind, that's no different than if you took a dividend. Now, when you have points that are variable in their value, there isn't a clear cash value, and that helps move you more into the non-taxable benefit of the CRA statement on this. They mention some other characteristics, like the points need to be earned into the hands of the employee. In this circumstance, we're both the employer and the employee. And the points need to not be a clear alternative to compensation. So there can't be some understanding that, say, your boss is paying you less because they're giving you these points. Now, the exact interpretation of all of that, I do think is somewhat nebulous and open to discussion with your accountant. But I would say that for people who are particularly concerned, and there are certain options that more clearly follow this guidance, and that's something that I help walk through with the people I work with.
Just in the interest of time, I may want to move on to the next section, but I know you talked about another service provider, Chexy, where you can pay personal taxes, I believe rent, utilities, and I think they charge a 1.5% fee, if I'm not mistaken. Is there anything specific you'd like to share about this option for people too, who want to maybe use their credit cards for these expenses?
Yeah, so there's two things I would say. So first off, just to clarify, the fee is 1.75 instead of pay simply 2.5.
Okay.
Yeah, but it doesn't currently support corporate taxes. Losing the ability to potentially write off that portion of the fee certainly impacts how you interpret the difference in charge. It is a very useful service otherwise. Certainly, again, if you're earning valuable points, sign-up bonus, all these things, it can still be quite useful. I actually have a meeting planned with the head of product with Chexy just in 2 days to discuss physician-specific needs, and I'm hopeful that they'll make some modifications to their program to better support some of the issues that we have. Maybe that's corporate taxes.
Good for you.
Maybe that's being able to do our payroll. So I'm excited to see what comes from that.
So guys, since the time of recording, there are updates to Chexy due to the hard work that Ben has been doing behind the scenes. So for background, Chexy is a service that lets you use a credit card to pay many bills. Examples include office rent and overhead, CMPA, personal sole proprietor CRA installments, personal expenses like property tax, tuition, childcare, and more. And Ben worked with them to launch a doctor and dentist focused offer. The key points of the promotion are that you can earn up to 15,000 additional Aeroplan points over their current public promotion, and you gain entry into the beta program for small business owners to get early access to new business-focused features as they are rolled out. And Chexy is providing enhanced clarity on eligible business expenses. So to sign up, you go to www.chexy.co/rewardsmd and create a new account, and then email smallbusiness@chexy.co with your license info to get the process of verification as a doctor or dentist. And now back to the interview.
Let's move on to maybe some physician or dentist specific scenarios. Let's say somebody is opening up a clinic and they have some lump sum expenses coming ahead. So maybe they're in the realm of $40,000, $50,000. What are maybe some strategies to navigate these lump sum expenses in a way using credit cards to optimize point accumulation?
Yeah, so optimizing lump sums is something that I like to think about a little bit the way how I think about patients and healthcare sometimes. I take a bit of a history about the patient themselves, like what cards have they already held? What's the goals of care? Let's say, what are they trying to get out of this? Are they just trying to get the, cash back or travel? Have they opened up specific cards that they're no longer going to be eligible for the sign-up bonuses? Are they looking to just open a single card, or are they open to kind of polypharmacy and we open up multiple cards and split up the fee across it? So that's patient specific factors that I consider.
I like that.
And then I consider the spend itself. I consider, are there transaction costs? So let's say this $40,000 clinic expense, is this a contractor who's going to charge them 2% to use a card? Because that needs to be factored in. Or is it a foreign expense? Maybe they're ordering a piece of equipment from the US, in which case we need to consider, does the credit card have foreign exchange fees or not? And I take those things in and I combine that with their long-term strategy. Let's say they were planning on getting at some point a platinum card anyway. Well, could this be the time to get it? So it's those three things. What's the patient past credit card history? What's the character of the spend and the fees associated with it? And what's their long-term strategy? And if it's a card that they're only going to open up for the sign-up bonus, so let's say that this $40,000 fee lines up with one of the new elevated bonuses that was released today, I would make sure that I communicate with them when they would want to close the card, so that I kind of create that off-ramp strategy for them.
Okay, Ben, as we kind of bring things home, I want to touch on redeeming points effectively. This is something that I did not really tackle in my first episode. So maybe you can just give us your approach, your framework to redeeming points. I know there's some factors that we have to take into account and just some general tips and tricks that you would kind of think about here.
This is something I actually, along with another community member, Alex Chase, who's pretty active on some of the physician groups, we put on these group sessions where we walk through our approach to optimizing redemption. But the basic premise is that for a lot of these programs, the best deals are not going to be on every single flight, every single date, every single route, not every single seat. And as a result, the way to get that best value is to leverage any kind of flexibility you have. Mm-hmm. So let's say, for example, you're thinking, I want to go to Portugal in July. Maybe if you could be a bit more flexible and say, Spain is also nice, Italy is also nice, south of France is also nice. Expand your mind a little bit, because the deal might not be to Portugal on the day you need. Mm-hmm. Or maybe you can be flexible on the date. Maybe it has to be Portugal because maybe you have family there you need to see, but maybe it doesn't really have to be July. It could be June. It could be August. And then I take this flexibility and I use a series of third-party tools that allow me to do broader searching. Because if you were to just go to Air Canada's website and plug in Toronto to Lisbon, Toronto to Milan, Toronto to Rome, and then every single date, one at a time, you'll go crazy. And that's just Aeroplan. If you have Amex points, you also have access to Air France. You also have access to British and more. But if you have a tool where you can instead put in Toronto to Europe in June or July for 3 people in business class, and these are the programs I have access to, then all of a sudden it becomes a lot easier. And in these sessions, we talk about ways to work around some of the challenges we have as physicians in terms of our flexibility. We talk about knowing where to look and how to recognize a good deal when we find one. But in general, it's all different forms of leveraging our flexibility. And I just want to remind people that as physicians, we often have one kind of flexibility that we might forget about when we're looking at using our points, which is the flexibility to pay cash if it's a bad deal. You know, if you have all these points you've accumulated and you really want to use them for great value, and you happen to be booking a flight from Toronto to Edmonton and you check on points and the value's poor, just pay cash. Right? This is an option we have. Usually the travel that we have to go on, whether it's for work or for family, oftentimes it can happen in economy and it's often domestic, and we can save our points for those experiences that we could never justify paying cash for. The business class, the first class travel to Asia, to Europe, to Africa, that sort of thing.
Ben, what are some of the search tools that you like to use from time to time?
Yeah, so there's 2 search tools that I recommend quite frequently. One of them, and I should disclose that I have an affiliation with both of these. I talk regularly with the CEO of one of them. So one of them is Roam. So Roam is a tool that the free version of it is pretty limited, but the paid version allows these like 60-day searches. Allows you to set an alert so that if you search and don't find the deal you need, you can set up an alert and they'll notify you later. So that's Roam. Another tool that I quite like, this one is a bit better as a free version. So it's Points Yeah.
Okay.
Again, I still have an affiliation with them, but of course, if you sign up for free, they don't give me anything. So feel free to, not be too concerned about conflict of interest there. But Points Yeah similarly has tools that allow you to search these broad dates and broad routes. I just find that its paid version is maybe not quite as feature rich as Roam. So certainly, if you're new to this, you could start off by making an account at Points Yeah. If you want to use my link on my website, it would just let me track that I've sent you their way. And that would be a good way to get started with those broad searches to see if you could find some of those deals.
So as we bring things home, if somebody says, you know what, I want to get started, maybe optimize how I travel. If I'm going to start with maybe 3, 4, or 5 credit cards and just kind of build a basic wallet, what would come top of mind for you? Which cards?
Yeah, so the first question I would ask is, where are you spending for your food? Is it someplace that takes Amex?
Yeah.
If it is, the Cobalt almost guaranteed needs to be in your wallet. The 5X, it's the most valuable transferable point, easy decision. If not, I would swap that card for the Ion Plus from Avion, from RBC most likely. Then you're going to need a kind of backup card, an insurance card, the card that you use for your big purchases and travel. If you went with the Cobalt in that first step, I would probably be inclined to suggest that you go with an Aeroplan Visa, probably the TD, and I would pick the tier based on your spending and your feelings about perks. If you pick the Ion card, I'd go with the Avion as the partner with RBC. So that would be the personal side. That would be the primary personal side. Maybe you want to add on a card with no foreign exchange fees or a hotel card, depending on your specific scenario. But the core strategy would be those 2. Then on the business side, I would start by asking the question, what is your organic spending like? Is it quite small? And if so, do you have any interest in tax spend? If you do, Then there's a short list of cards that make sense for tax spending, like the Business Platinum, the Business Aeroplan Reserve, the Business Gold, and a couple others, in which case that should be your card. And if that card that you picked happens to be a business Amex, again, you'll probably want a Visa for the off circumstance where they don't take it. Usually the Visa overflow on the business side is really quite small, so the specific Visa card doesn't matter too much. You can hyper optimize it, but if it's just $200 a month or something like that, it doesn't really matter too much.
And Ben, any closing thoughts, and maybe just tell people where we can learn about the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so you can find my website at rewardsmd.ca. I also have a Facebook group under RewardsMD. I added the extension Canada because I started getting some people asking questions about credit cards that we don't have access to here, and it was distracting too much of my time. Through my website, you can reach out for a one-on-one. I don't charge for them. I do receive compensation from various banks and websites and tools and these sorts of things, and I always try to disclose that transparently, and I don't limit the stuff I write about on my website or that we discuss to things that I'm compensated for. But certainly that's the best way to reach out to me. One-on-ones I usually use to discuss earning strategies because they're often very personalized based on how much you spend and where you spend and what you're trying to do with your points. And then redemption, I often try to do in a group setting, just trying to be as efficient as possible with my time. So I'll get maybe 50 or 100 people in a group and I'll walk them through scenarios. Okay, you live in Edmonton and you're trying to get to Europe. What sort of airlines can do that? What points are good for that? How would I search for it? How would I kind of arrange my thought process? And then the last thing we do is we do some kind of more small group sessions. So let's say you've accumulated, say, 500,000 points, 1 million points, and you're actively in the process of booking, but you've tried the basic approaches and you're not finding what you need. These small group sessions, we kind of go through your specific travel scenarios. There's still a group setting so that people can learn a little bit from each other's scenarios. And so we can kind of, again, optimize the efficiency piece of it. But it's not as didactic as the large group session where you're just listening to me talk for an hour plus about how I find my best deals.
It's really nice. I think you're also building some community here too, which is great to see. And I liked your blog. I spent some time the last couple of weeks checking it out. So I encourage people to check it out. And you write really well. And I think you are tackling things that other providers in this space haven't maybe looked into as much and a bit more kind of physician centric. So Ben, it's been great to connect with you and wishing you success.
Thank you so much. It was great chatting.
Okay, guys, there is a lot to digest in that episode. I thought Ben did a really good job giving us some frameworks for both accumulating points, understanding the different ecosystems, and then also for redeeming points. If you got value from that episode, I would be really appreciative if you can go ahead and share this episode with people in your network. This not only helps me to continue growing the show, but by sharing, you're adding real value to other people in your network. So again, thank you for tuning in. See you in a few weeks' time. Stay well, stay savvy.